Oh, wait, I don't need the cable. Or should I say the fuse? I'm sorry, the jokes are just so easy. I'm gonna hold off on all jokes until the end of the video about the explosive stuff. Let's just review this as a phone that never got recalled for blowing up. So this is my third Android phone that I've reviewed. I started with the Vivo 5, which was a low-budget Android phone, but I really enjoyed it. Then the very popular straight from Android Nexus 6P, which got a lot of hate because most people love it, and I could never find the right groove with it. I always felt like there was something missing. That was a mid-range phone, so now I'm testing a top-of-the-line Android phone for $950 unlocked. Wow, that's the price of the iPhone, maxed out. I'm buying from Samsung, which is the most popular Android provider, and I can see why. The design of the Note 7 I'm very much a fan of. Obviously very solid, and I know I've said before I don't want glass on the front and back of my phone, but after using the Note 7 for a while, it really does feel quite good in the hand, and it's not as slippery as I thought it would be, and yet still remains smooth. And since the Note 7 is very round on the edges, it feels comfortable to hold. It doesn't cut into you, and I've never slipped it or lost grip on it. It just feels great. And of course, with the device, you're getting top of the line features and specs. Waterproofing, which is really cool, but it felt wrong. So I took it in the shower to see if it would work. Sorry to put that image in your head. It's the truth. It's what happened. And it just felt weird to hold such an expensive piece of technology in water, but it held up fine. However, it makes kind of using the phone impossible because every time a little droplet of water hits the screen, it registers that as a touch, so everything's just freaking out. If I tried to watch a video, it would close the video, play another video. If I was talking to one person, it would leave that message and then start video calling the other person. And yeah, that could have ended poorly. And then one time it was in the shower and it gave me an alert that water was near the USB port or moisture. That confused me because I'm like, I thought you were waterproof, not waterproof until water gets in the USB port. Aren't you prepared for this? Well, I guess not, because it gave me this alert that said don't charge it for at least 6 to 7 hours. And about every 10 minutes it would tell you there's moisture in the port, there's moisture in the port. We looked it up and it said don't blow on it, don't like try to suck it out yourself. It just said wait. So probably don't get your phone wet when it's low on battery, because after it's wet you don't want to be charging it because that could cause some kind of damage, I guess. I just think it's kind of weird that we can call something waterproof even though water can still technically damage it. Even though it wasn't completely submerged, it was just in the shower. Water was just hitting it. It wasn't like being in a pool. But whatever, you know, you can't win them all. And it's got one speaker on the bottom, that's it. And if you cover it up, it gets completely silent, which in some scenarios can be helpful, in other scenarios can be bad. And this was also the first device I've ever had that has a curved display. And my opinion on these Edge phones is they're okay. I can't say they make the phone better, and I can't say they make the phone worse. They're just kind of there. So if the iPhone one day decided to add curved edges and stuff, I'm sure it would be great and I'd still love it. And if the iPhone never does that, I'm gonna be fine with it. It doesn't change my opinion on the phone. The only thing it kind of helps with is making the bezels smaller, which I'm in favor of. As long as you make the bezels thinner, that's great. Whether you have to bend the display or just keep a flat display and make the bezels thinner, do it. That's fine. And I have held the S7 Edge, and that to me curves the display a little too much because I was noticing when I was watching videos on it, it was like distorted, and that kind of bugged me. But on the Note 7, it's not curved that much, so when I'm watching videos, it doesn't look distorted at all. So the way the Note 7 does it, I'm fine with. Then, of course, the biggest advertised thing is the iris scanner, which of course scans your irises as a way of unlocking the phone. I am not a fan of it for a few reasons. Firstly, I think it's kind of awkward and weird to widen your eyes to unlock your phone. You know, every time I need to unlock it, I have to do this, and that just felt weird to do a lot. You know, a lot of the time I like to rest my phone on my desk and just be tapping at it here and there when I'm talking to someone and then be focused on the computer with my keyboard and mouse. But every time I wanted to unlock the phone, I would have to pick it up, flip it, and widen the eyes, or I'd have to hover my head over the desk like this, and that just felt weird. Now, this isn't a terrible method. A lot of the time it works fine. Half the time I'd say it worked the way it was supposed to. But I just think unlocking your phone with your fingerprint is faster. And the Note 7 does have a fingerprint sensor like most phones do these days. And if my cruddy fingers actually did work on it, I'd use it. And oftentimes I found the iris scanner not very reliable. Whenever I used it outside, especially if it was in direct sunlight, wouldn't work at all. And oftentimes you're kind of holding your phone further away and it can't see you from this distance. And many times it would just say hold the device closer, and I'd hold it closer and it would say I don't know, I can't see you. And it would just say use the passcode, I can't see your eyes. Okay, so one time it was late at night and I was going to check my messages on this, and when I turned it on, it blasted me with all the display's light. So I was like squinting my eyes like this. I was like, oh god. And I didn't turn off the auto brightness. The auto brightness was still activated, but it wasn't kicking in. It was just super bright. But I had to force my eyes open to unlock it, so I was just going, "Argh." And then luckily it unlocked and then the brightness went down. So I'm glad Samsung tried something new. It is original. I just don't think they may have put it into practice and realized that, hey, maybe it's not that useful. My experience with TouchWiz, Samsung's kind of Android skin type deal, was also not that seamless, I'm afraid. This is one of the things I think the Nexus 6P had an advantage over. It had very optimized software and hardware working together, where the Note 7 was constantly asking for apps to have permission to things in a way that was not intuitive, and I was just trying to do very simple things, like taking out the S Pen and trying to auto-select something. It would be like, do you want permission for the pen to have overlay access? And I'm like, the pen is part of the phone. Why couldn't the pen have access to the phone? And there's times in Twitter when I would try to select an image to tweet, and it would say, Twitter does not have access to this thing because of this reason, so go to this and turn off this. Things felt like they could have been default set up better. They should have put more focus onto allowing permissions to things rather than preloading it with all these apps that no one uses. I think on iOS and pure Android, they make managing permissions a lot more simple just by asking you before you download the app or when you open the app. And it just says yes or no. It doesn't say go to this settings and change this. However, I do like that Samsung includes a close all apps button. Why can't all phones have that? Why don't desktops have that? Seriously. And oh yeah, the S Pen. My thoughts on having a pen in the phone is why? I tried taking notes on it for some reason. I don't need to take notes like that. And first of all, a screen like this is kind of too small to take good notes on. And the stylus is so plastic, thin, and light that it doesn't really feel like you're using a real pencil. You can't get as accurate. Plus, we can all type faster than we can handwrite. So I don't understand what it's really used for. Plus, it's got a curved screen, right? Who wants to take notes on something that rounds off? So when you're writing, the stylus kind of falls off the phone. I mean, sure, it's a stylus. It's fun to, like, you know, click around, and it's fun to show off people. Whoa, it's got a stylus in it. I mean, you can scroll, you can draw super basic pictures, but I didn't really find a functional purpose for it. I'd like to know how much better the battery could be if they didn't have to design an entire hole in the phone to fit the pen in. Now, the side apps that you swipe out with that edge display, I guess that's really easy access, but I never found myself needing it for anything because I can just hit the home button and I'm in the home screen and there's 95% of the apps I'll ever need. And that seems to be just as fast as just swiping to the side. There's some multitasking features that Samsung has added that's not supposed to come to Android till 7.0. Nougat, I believe it's pronounced. Don't know why they went with that name. They should have just called it Nutella. That's so much easier to remember. One of these features is split screen, which I think is just terrible. You can't really read the news very well when only half of your screen is being used for it, no matter which orientation you're at. And you can't text people because your keyboard can't show up. So I guess it's nice when you're watching videos and reading the news, but still, I'd much rather just have the app take up the whole screen. I don't think having a video playing on the top or bottom is very intuitive. It doesn't look right, but if you want it, I guess it's there. So those kind of features feel sloppy to me, and I don't think most people will use them. And I'm also kind of not a fan of having invisible buttons. I constantly found myself hitting the back button when I didn't mean to. I think if you're going to have a button on your phone, the user should know where it is and what it looks like. Even if we memorize all the parts, it shouldn't just be like invisible. But hey, this is just the Apple sheep guy who's used to the iPhone talking. The cameras on it are okay. They take great photos and okay video. I'm a vlogger, so I take way more videos than I do photos. 4K video on it, of course, was very crisp, but I did find it odd that the microphone was facing the other way when I was vlogging like this. And I am not home. I'm in a place I've never been before. I'm at a hotel in Lodi. A family member of mine is getting married. Whereas on an iPhone, depending on which direction you're recording, a different microphone will activate. In other words, it will capture audio from this direction if you're recording that direction. Whereas if I'm holding my phone like this, my voice sounds way more muddled than it would be if it was like this. I don't know why it's like that. Of course, I'm just nitpicking here. It's little thing. I also didn't want to record anything lower than 4K because when I switched it to 1080p at 60 frames a second, just, you know, for kicks to see what it looked like, everything felt very, very compressed. It didn't look good to me. It also had a hard time focusing on me, and it wasn't super stable. It was better than the Nexus 6P in terms of stabilization. However, it's really hard to beat the iPhone 6 Plus's optical and digital stabilization that work together. I'm sure this has that as well, but I just think the iPhone does it better, and the iPhone can focus on me very easily. Of course, I also noticed Samsung's wide-angle selfie-taking camera, and I understand why they did it because, you know, when you're taking a photo with all your friends, you want to be able to fit everyone in it. But here's the thing, I don't have friends. I'm just taking selfies myself, and what a wide-angle does is make the center of your face look a lot closer to the camera than everything else. The quality of these pictures were great, but I understand why Apple decides to have the lens be a bit more mid, like a mid-range look to it. I just prefer my selfies to not make my face look huge. And it luckily came with a pair pair of completely original, not a copy of anyone else's earpods that sounded pretty good on here. And those earpods came in a box that looked exactly like some other smartwatch that shall remain nameless. And the Samsung keyboard actually had a very original take on typing by taking another smartphone's keyboard color scheme and design and making it exactly like their own, and that smartphone they took it from shall remain nameless. I'm kidding, I'm just trying to trigger all of you. I know Apple copies people, everyone copies people. It's fine. If they're copying each other and it makes the device better, then it's worth it, right? Now, overall, I gotta say, I was pleasantly surprised with the Note 7. The design was great, and it went well with waterproofing, and I like the way all the buttons are placed. And I have to say, if I had to switch to Android, this is the phone I'd choose. Probably because it's the most like the iPhone. The lack of optimized software and hardware, though, kept me from loving the phone all the way, and oftentimes it did make me want to switch back to my iPhone. So I didn't reach that moment where I felt like I was missing something on iOS. Shocker for the Apple sheep, right? But yeah, great hardware and features, just not as thought out as most iPhones feel. Okay, now, addressing the thing that the phone is unfortunately gonna be known the most for, remembered for those recalls and the canceled of production and sales, 35 out of the 1 million Note 7 sold burned up or exploded while charging. So honestly, think about it. 35 out of a million, it was probably more than a million, is not that much. It's not a huge danger. However, in the media, they like to blow that up so that everyone panics because that sells well in the news. But Samsung, I think, handled it in the best way possible. They promised refunds and replacements for everyone who bought one, which could not have been cheap for them, but it was very wise of them to ensure safety among all their users, even though this was a very low occurrence, given that there's more than 999,900 devices that were perfectly fine, so the odds of mine failing on me were very, very slim. So I was not worried about this at all. However, I did receive a notice that said you have to send it back because we're recalling all of them. So of course I am sending it back, but I hope this phone is remembered more as being a great Note phone from Samsung and not the one that explodes on you, even though it happened only 35 times. So if you like Samsung, I think you'll really like this one. It's probably the best phone you can get from Samsung once it goes back into stores and online and all that. It might be already by the time this is uploaded. And it was an Apple sheep's mildly good experience with an Android device. So if you're looking to switch from iOS to Android,
I will ban you from the channel.
And I'll recommend that you get this one. Whew, okay, now I can send this thing back and not have to worry about it exploding. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. I had to. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.